Kage Kid Creative presents. Kage Kids Kitchen, Kage Kids Kitchen. Kage Kids Kitchen, Kage Kids Kitchen. Kage Kids Kitchen, Kage Kids Kitchen.
My name is James, aka Kage Kid, and you are watching my show, Kage Kids Kitchen, the Back to School series, where I use all of the things that I've learned in culinary school and all of the experience I've had in all of my jobs ever since in order to make a meal for you here today. On this episode of Kage Kids Kitchen, I'm going to be doing 2 lessons for you. I'm going to be doing starches and sauces, and I'm going to be doing some cool abnormal combinations of those things for you. I'm going to be making a tomato rice pilaf, and I'm also going to be making spaghetti espagnole, which is 2 very important sauces and 2 very important starches. Today, I'm going to be joined by Wesley, who is an inspiring Broadway artist, who is new to New York City, and a pretty awesome person as well.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you for being here. We're also going to have another guest join us later as well. So in culinary school, you learn about the 5, arguably 6 mother sauces that exist in the French culinary world. In my class, we learned it with the expression TV in bed challah. Every letter stands for one of the mother sauces that we have. T stands for tomato sauce, V stands for velouté sauce, B stands for bechamel sauce, E stands for espagnole sauce, D stands for demi-glace, and challah is for hollandaise, TV in bed challah. On my last channel, I showed you how to make hollandaise sauce. I also showed you how to make a bechamel sauce, which later gets turned into a cheese sauce. On this episode, I'm going to show you how to make tomato sauce. I'm also going to show you how to make espagnole sauce. Demi-glace is kind of like a breakdown of espagnole sauce. And then on a future episode, I'm going to also show you how to make velouté sauce as well. The 2 starches that we're going to be using today is rice and spaghetti. Of course, there are other starches like cereals and breads and things like that, but those are the 2 very important starches that we're going to be focusing on today. The very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start on our tomato sauce. Right here I have some tomatoes that I already cut some edges into. What you really want to do is you just want to take your knife and you want to do an incision. If you remember from my first episode, this is the beginning of the process of doing a kokansei of a tomato, which is essentially where we blanch a tomato and then we cool it down in some ice water and then we cut it to the appropriate lengths that we want to do. So right now I'm going to take these tomatoes over to our boiling water and then we will continue with our tomato sauce. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to take our tomatoes and put them into our boiling water. Once our tomatoes have been in our boiling water for about 30 to 40 seconds, take them out with a spoon and transfer them right into your bucket of ice water. We're gonna let this chill for about another 2 to 3 minutes. Now that our tomatoes are done finished blanching, they'll look kind of like this. And what you wanna do is you wanna make sure that you're taking all of the skin off of the tomato.
Definitely never seen this process before.
Never seen this process before? This is actually how they make stewed tomatoes.
Stewed tomatoes usually come in a can for me.
It's true, and the process is not even that hard to make. As you can see, it was just literally like 30 seconds in boiling water. It's literally enough once you have that incision just to get the excess off of your tomato. This, in my opinion, is the best way to get like a good tomato sauce going also. Some recipes literally just have you throw like whole tomatoes, like not even like cook them beforehand in there. But I like to do this process because then you don't even get like the crunchy part of the skin inside of there, and it makes the tomato sauce a lot smoother. The last time when I did a concassé tomato, I was super precise with the cuts. For a tomato sauce, you don't really have to be super precise with the cuts because it's all about kind of just cooking it down. I'm going to cut these in half, and then I'm going to cut these halves into thirds, and then I'm going to cut those thirds right in half. And these 6 or these chunks are big enough for exactly what you need for a tomato sauce. What is your favorite dish that is made with tomato sauce usually?
I would say spaghetti, but I do a very different spaghetti. Like my spaghetti has 3 meats and cheeses in the sauce, but I don't use real tomatoes. I use tomato paste and tomato sauce, and that's the favorite thing that I cook with tomato sauce.
That's cool.
But who doesn't love a golden egg, you know?
Very true. It's funny because even though we're making spaghetti espagnole, it has kind of like the same feel as like a bolognese. It just doesn't have the actual meat inside of it, which it gives it an interesting taste, I feel like. So once your tomatoes are cut up, we're all ready to get started to start cooking our tomato sauce. The first thing that we're going to do when we start our tomato sauce is we're going to heat up our pan. We're going to add in some olive oil. When your pan is hot, you're going to add in your sweet potato and your onions. You want your onions to be see-through and you want your sweet potato to be nice and soft. You might be asking why I'm using sweet potato in my recipe for tomato sauce today. Sweet potato has a lot of natural sugar inside of it as a vegetable, and I'm not using any actual sugar to balance out the acidity of the tomatoes for my sauce, and the sweet potato adds a good natural sugar into the mix. You can also use carrots for this, but sweet potato has a good amount of sweetness in it as well. Once your onions and your sweet potato are nice and soft and translucent, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add in your tomatoes. I roasted these garlics in the oven at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes beforehand. That goes right into here. I also have some lemon juice here and some vinegar as well. Give this a good stir, and we're gonna let this cook down for about 30 minutes or so. Today's episode is brought to you by Beefsteak Tomatoes. Just kidding. But seriously, you should use beefsteak tomatoes for your tomato sauce. They're really a juicy type of tomatoes that are really good for tomato sauces. And also, we're not sponsored. Once your tomatoes are coming done towards the end of their simmer, we're gonna add in some salt, some pepper, and we're gonna also add in basil as well. And we're gonna cook this down for about another 2 minutes or so, just enough so that the basil can wilt down inside of the tomatoes. Once you're done cooking your tomato sauce, you have a good chunky portion here. You can choose to keep it this chunky. Some people like really chunky tomato sauce. I'm going to be using an immersion blender to get it a little less chunky. I'm not going to do it too much because I don't want it to be a whole juicy sauce, but I do want a little bit of the chunks in there, so I'm going to toast it just a little bit.
So good. I've never seen a fresh tomato sauce made.
Ah, good first time for everything.
Yeah, like immersion blenders.
Mm-hmm.
Is then safe for the pot? Like it will it scratch the surface?
Yeah, so actually it won't. There's a good guard here that keeps it from like actually like touching the pot. And I never like put it right directly into the bottom. You're pretty much just putting it into the sauce enough so that it's in there, and then just blending it in there. But I'm not actually touching the bottom.
Thus
of the
the
pan.
immersion.
That's the immersion blender. So this is as good as I like my tomato sauce to be. I like it to have still a bit of chunks in there. You can still see some whole pieces of tomatoes, some basil, some of the onion is still intact there, and it's a good consistency. I'm gonna take a little bit of this tomato sauce. I'm gonna take 2 tablespoons of it and separate it for our espagnole sauce. And then I'm gonna put the rest of it away so that it can cool down. Alrighty, so now that our tomato sauce is done, the next thing that we're going to do is we're gonna start on our espagnole sauce. In here I have some flour, I have some butter, I also have some beef stock here, I have some mirepoix. For those of you who don't know what mirepoix is, onions.
I don't know.
Oh yes, so mirepoix is a mixture of onions, celery, and carrots. It's the staple of French cuisine when you're getting aromatics within your food. I also have some of the tomato sauce that we literally just made. And in here I have a satchel of cheesecloth that has some dry parsley, some bay leaves, and some peppercorn as well. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna go right over to the stove to get ready on our espagnole sauce. Alrighty, so to start off our espagnole sauce, we're gonna throw some butter into the pan. We're gonna let that melt. And once the butter has melted, we're gonna add in our mirepoix. That is the celery, the onion, and the carrot mix. We're gonna cook this down until our onions are translucent and our carrots and celery are nice and soft.
We do a similar thing in Louisiana. We just call it seasoning mix. And you can buy it frozen in the grocery store. But it's those ingredients, so it's technically mirepoix, but we just call it seasoning mix.
Seasoning mix, that's good to know. I actually didn't know that.
I guess we just break it down to layman's terms because we're not all culinary students, but we all cook.
Yeah.
So mirepoix would be called seasoning mix.
In France, they call it mirepoix. In America, they call it seasoning mix.
We can't go back if we've never been.
No, that's true. That's what the show is for, honestly, truthfully speaking. Even people who use food constantly, I feel like, are still afraid to really adventure into food and to really like get into food, even the ingredients that they're already familiar with. And it's literally just because they don't know. And it's not like this stuff is like super, super hard, but there's also no easy, accessible place to get this information.
The fact that we don't have the right names for it doesn't mean that we don't know how to cook. It just doesn't. We use different terminology.
No, it's true. And I'm not pretentious enough to literally like pick up a bottle of seasoning mix and go, oh, this is not seasoning mix, this is Mirepoix, and throw it away. I'm gonna look at it and go, oh, this is Mirepoix. This is a cool thing.
That smells divine.
Aromatics. If you literally want a house to smell really, really good, you literally just make Mirepoix. Put it into a pan.
I think sometimes I add garlic too. Like I put garlic in everything because
As you should.
garlic deserves to be in everything, except for maybe cake. But
Except for maybe cake. And that's, I mean,
it's still questionable.
still questionable. Once your Mirepoix is browned, you want to make sure that you're not burning it. You're going to add in your flour. A roux is just a mixture of flour and fat in order to make a thickening agent for the sauce. And right now it's going to coat up the vegetables and also make them nice and pasty as well.
Do we get official measurements for the recipe?
For the purpose of my show, I do measurements, but when I cook on my own, I stop when the ancestors tell me to stop.
That's when you stop. Like you stop when it smells right.
Exactly. So once your flour and your Mirepoix has turned to brown, there's actually 3 levels to roux. There is a white roux, which is the roux that you get when you literally first enter the flour into the butter and it combines for the first time. There's a blonde roux, which is like a lighter brown. This is the dark roux when it gets really nice and brown in the pan. This is, you want to be careful not to go past this point, only because it's easy to burn it at this point, but you really want it to look just like this.
It looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah. Keep doing what you do.
We're gonna add in our 3 cups of beef stock. And we're also going to add in our tomato sauce as well. And we're gonna give this a stir until it comes to a rolling boil. Alrighty, so the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our cheesecloth, add some parsley, some bay leaves, and some peppercorns. Gonna wrap that up, just like that. Have my sterilized rubber band here. Just gonna tie it up. I'm gonna put it right into here. I want to put it in a place though that I can easily grab this at the ends when I no longer need it, but I want to make sure that the actual satchel is inside of the actual sauce itself so that it is actually imparting the flavor. Once it comes to a rolling boil, you're going to give it just one last quick stir, and then we're going to roll it down to a simmer. The Espagnole sauce takes about an hour to cook, or equally you want to wait for the sauce to reduce about 1/3 of the way down into the pot. That's how you know that the Espagnole sauce is ready. Now that our Espagnole sauce is simmering, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to get started on our tomato rice pilaf. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to rinse our rice. Take my rice, I'm going to pour it right over into this colander, and then I'm going to rinse it in the sink. You want to make sure that you're really rinsing through the rice. As you can see, the water falling from the rice is super white right now. You want to keep going until that water is a little clear. It's okay if it's still a little cloudy, but you really want to make sure that the water is as clear as possible. So in starting our tomato rice pilaf, the very first thing you want to do is you want to get your onions onto a hot pan. Just like all the rest of the onions in this recipe, you want to cook them until they're nice and translucent. Once your onions are translucent, the next thing you're going to do is you're going to add in your rice. And you're going to give it a nice toast for about 30 seconds to 1 minute. Toasting the rice adds a depth of flavor to the rice, getting it nice and coated into the fat as you stir it around. You want to get your rice right into the center here. Try to get all of those singular grains from around the sides. And then we're going to add in about 1/2 cup of white wine here. If you're actually cooking this, you can actually smell the wine in the pan. You want to cook it until that smell is gone. You want to make sure that all the alcohol is actually cooked out of the wine because we only want the flavor of the white wine. you'll notice that the wine actually deglazes on the pan, and you actually want to cook it until most of that liquid actually disappears from the rice. Once again, pick your rice all the way back to the center. This is important so that when you add in your stock, there isn't pieces of lone rice that don't cook along with everything. That's very important in a pilaf. You don't want some of your rice to cook, and you don't want the other parts of it to be still super starchy and super tough and super grainy. And once your wine has deglazed, the next thing you're going to do, add in your stock. I'm using some veggie stock here, and I'm also going to add in some of our tomato sauce as well. Make sure you give it a good mix. You want all of the rice to be incorporated by the liquid. Make sure you're scraping down the sides for your rice. And then you're gonna flatten it out right into the pan like so. And once we reach here and our rice is boiling, we're gonna lower this down to a simmer. And then we're gonna cover it for 15 to 18 minutes with some aluminum foil right on top. While we're letting our tomato rice pilaf simmer, I have one fresh tomato here that's finely diced. I'm gonna add a pinch of coarse salt on top of it. Add some flavor to the tomatoes. In addition, it'll also dry out the tomatoes so that the tomatoes give it a more crunchy bite when we add them to the tomato rice pilaf, and also gives it a continuous tomato flavor in it as well. Alrighty, so our tomato pilaf has been simmering for about 20 minutes now. I'm gonna uncover it. I'm gonna give it a quick stir here. It looks pretty good. A lot of the moisture has cooked through the rice. You can see that the rice itself is nice and fluffy. We're gonna take it off of the heat. We're gonna add in those tomatoes, and we're also going to add in some fresh parsley as well. We're gonna give this one last stir, and then we're gonna recover it back up and let it sit for about 5 more minutes before we get it ready to serve. Alrighty, so we're gonna let our pilaf sit off to the side. In the meantime, we're gonna continue on our Espagnole sauce over here. As you're finishing your Espagnole sauce, you wanna make sure that you are skimming any of the impurities right off of the top here. You wanna make sure that you are getting all of that out of your Espagnole sauce. This has been simmering for a little bit over an hour now. We're gonna take out our satchel, give that a good squeeze, and then we're going to run the rest of this sauce through a colander. So I have our Espagnole sauce here. If you really wanted to, you could also use cheesecloth, but I don't think it's really necessary in order to do. Pour it right through the colander here. With your spoon, you just want to make sure that you are pushing those vegetables right through, getting as much of the sauce as you possibly can.
I just feel like I'm used to seeing my vegetables in my sauces.
You know what's funny? I feel the same exact way. When I was testing out the recipe, I actually made 2 versions of the spaghetti espagnole. One that actually kept all of the vegetables in it, because I thought that, I was like, well, these are vegetables that are like actually delicious. I don't understand why we're like putting them to waste. And one that was the regular version of it that I'm gonna use with the mushroom. I liked the version with the vegetables in it more.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, why are we getting rid of the things that are healthy and delicious?
We're losing healthy vegetables for aesthetic.
I don't like it.
Sounds like a campaign.
We're going back. We're going back to school. We're going back to what is presentable in culinary arts, and that's fair. And there's a difference between culinary art and feeding the family.
No, exactly. Alrighty, so before we start our spaghetti, our second guest just arrived. I'd like to welcome the fabulous Nicole, killing it with the looks, even though she thinks she's not ready to be on camera right now.
She's ready. She ready.
I want to welcome you to Kage Kids Kitchen. Thank you so much for coming.
We had a moment about the immersion blender because that's something I've never seen in my life. So we had a moment.
So I missed something good.
Yes.
Turns out, Focus being unapologetically black and beautiful, and I needed it. So, and I appreciate y'all for having me here. And I don't know why I got to me all of a sudden.
As we start our spaghetti espagnole, the very first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go right over to the stovetop, and we got to work on these mushrooms. The very first thing we're going to do for our spaghetti espagnole is we're going to start cooking our mushrooms. We have a hot pan here with some olive oil we're going to add our mushrooms into. And mushrooms take in a lot of fat, really. So you want to make sure that even after you coat the bottom of the pan with some olive oil, you can even coat the top of the mushrooms with some olive oil as well. I'm also going to throw in some salt, and I'm also going to throw in a little bit of thyme as well.
Is olive oil better than butter?
Butter, as we all
I'm
know.
a butter girl.
Yeah. Butter is more fat, obviously, because it comes right from the cow.
And it's so yummy. So why olive oil over butter?
I always tend to sway a lot more towards, I guess, the healthier side of a meal. It's a more unhealthy type of fat. And it's not that it doesn't taste better. Honestly, I love butter. Actually, you're about to tell me to throw some butter onto these mushrooms right
Yes!
now.
I won this. I made the decision. I changed his entire recipe. You're welcome.
Olive oil, you have to finesse olive oil.
I feel like she's not salty enough. I feel like she's not flavorful enough.
That's why you have to finesse her. Butter, you don't really have to finesse. It has all the flavor in there, basically.
Exactly.
You add
So
some
that's-
salt, she's done.
That's why I'm saying, why did we give olive oil that moment when butter had it?
You know why?
Like, she had it. She didn't have to change anything about herself to be correct.
You know why? Because I'm already finessing the olive oil, and that's where I'm showing my skill in the show.
That's good. I'll take it, but I don't think olive oil deserves as much love as you give it. It's like Cardi B versus Nicki Minaj. Like, Cardi B is the butter, and Nicki Minaj is the olive oil. I said it.
Wait, so I
And that's
guess
the problem.
she's in a divorce. Is this true?
She is getting a divorce.
Seriously?
She don't cook, she don't clean.
In her defense,
She's rich.
men is raggedy, and sometimes you find yourself needing more than what they offer.
That's very true. So while our mushrooms are continuing to saute, we have some boiling water over here. We have some semi-fresh spaghetti over here. I'm gonna just get that right into there. Cook your pasta to whatever directions are on the box. This is semi-fresh pasta, so this is gonna take about 4 or 5 minutes. In the meantime, I'm just gonna move it around, make sure that it's actually getting nice and loose in there while our mushrooms are also cooking down as well.
I mean, Meg Thee Stallion is actually.
No, stop bringing her up.
Why you hate her? What did she do to you? Did she disrespect you in some way?
No, it's just like she's not on the same level as Cardi B. So you dumb because they had one song together. Cardi B had songs with other people.
But I think Meg Thee Stallion in her own right is good because she has a song with Nicki, she has a song with Cardi B, she has a song with Beyonce. She's doing what all the other queens of the rap game need to be doing and collaborating and not fighting with everybody else.
Yeah.
Hello, Darius.
She done took the hair.
Love the earring.
Thank you.
Hi,
Hey,
Darius.
Mom.
Honestly, it is okay. I don't mind just being on the side.
I can also put you in at the end where we all eat together, just only that.
I can, you know, Karen.
Yes!
Alrighty, so the next thing that we're going to do for our Espanol sauce is we're going to put the Espanol sauce into our mushrooms, and then we're going to also add the pasta into our mushrooms as well. Once our pasta is drained, we're going to add it right into the mushrooms and the Espanol sauce. We're going to get it nice and stirred in there. Make sure that all that sauce is incorporated with the spaghetti. So the very last thing that we're going to do for our spaghetti, we're going to turn off the heat, then we're going to add in some honey, a little bit more thyme, and we're going to also add in a pinch of salt as well. Give it one good mix. The honey and the thyme, they both have the same purpose in this recipe. They're both just to counteract the Espanol sauce. The Espanol sauce is usually supposed to support something heavy, like a heavy steak. But since we're not using like a meat here, and the only thing we really have is the mushrooms, I feel like the flavor might be overpowering. So I want to tune it down a little bit, which is why I use the thyme as opposed to all the other seasonings. And they use honey when you're actually cooking with meat in Espanol sauce, one to tenderize the meat, but also to counteract the actual flavor of like the meaty flavor itself.
This
as well.
is gonna be an out-of-the-box question. Espanol versus mole.
Mole sauce is a variation variation of español sauce. It's made with a lot of the same ingredients. It's made with the roux that you start with. You don't necessarily use the mirepoix or anything like that. Like you can, but you don't really have to. We want to add
So what
to
we've
it.
learned is that mole sauce is an Espanol sauce
Yes,
with a little variation.
with a little variation, and that's what most sauces are that are like in the 6 mother sauces. It's usually like
We know that mother sauces are important,
exactly,
and we know that mother sauces created the wheel,
exactly.
and we know that there are sauces outside of that fit into these 6 sauces, which is why we call them the mother sauces.
Now that everything is ready, it is time to eat. Alrighty guys, dig in.
What should I try first?
You should try the pilaf first and then go into the español sauce.
Mmm. Okay, bitch.
I love the tomato.
I have not known how to cook rice outside of rice. And to have this moment where you just use a saucepan and it's not grainy or coarse or abrasive. It's really nice.
I love the tomato and the garlic. It's very present.
I love the flavor and like
That's
the
when you
mushroom.
sauce. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh, I gotta get to her. We do love her.
It tastes very like it's like home.
Mm.
You know?
There are textures and flavors
I don't even know.
that I did not expect from spaghetti. In my life, spaghetti's always been connected to a tomato sauce. So having this Espanol sauce is just so different and vibrant and bright. Like it's a lot brighter than tomato sauce. I feel bright and grounded.
The food is really good.
Thank you.
I'm really loving
Very
this.
good.
I'm sorry. I just want to keep eating.
No, please, that's what it's for.
Oh my god.
Which one do you guys like better so far, the pilaf or the español?
They're really good, but the
The
Espanol,
Espanol,
yeah.
I'm gonna say
I
rice
could taste
pilaf,
the
and I'll
time
tell you
Put
why.
into it.
Thank you.
The rice pilaf has changed my opinion of the consistency of rice.
Mm.
Mostly earthy and smooth and inviting. I don't know what adjectives I'm saying, but that's what's,
The adjectives in your heart.
that's what's happening in my mouth. It's like I've had rice more times than I can count, but I haven't had rice like this.
Also, the Espanol sauce is like, it feels very fall.
Mm.
I could have this like for Thanksgiving.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how good it is. Overall, really great.
Thank you.
Really, really
thank you.
great.
Would you guys ever eat these things again?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would like a doggy bag of the pasta to go.
Thank you guys all so much for coming to my 3rd episode of Kage Kids Kitchen. I heavily appreciate all of you. You guys have been great energy. Thank you guys so much for trying the food.
Thanks for
Thank
having
you.
us. Thanks
It's
for
great.
We
feeding
did really
us.
follow
Thank
us.
you.
Like we had such a great time, and we're like so full of food.
It was
I
so
played
good.
it.
Thank you.
You did so much work. I'm so proud of you.
It was good, y'all.
Thank you guys for watching my 3rd episode of Kage Kids Kitchen. I want to do another thank you to all the guests that were on my show today. If you like what you see, you can watch the first 2 episodes over here. You can watch all of my other content over here. If you want to subscribe, click my face over here. You can also follow me on my social media. I'm literally Kage Kid, literally everywhere. Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Snapchats, whatever the kids are using nowadays. If you guys like the apron that I wore today, it was made by Coco Laciel. The proceeds that you get for getting one of her aprons, it goes to renovating a yoga facility in Canton, New York. Also, these aprons are super cool because it has a towel on the bottom that you can wipe your hands on. Again, thank you guys so much for watching my episode. I hope you learned a lot. Peace.
Kogi Kids Kitchen, Kogi Kids Kitchen. Kogi Kids Kitchen.